Neville Goddard told his VIP students to do this exercise before anything else, that this is the most powerful way to manifest in your life, and it will change your self-identity, it will change your self-concept, shift your states of consciousness, and you will arrive at your destination with your wish fulfilled and manifest the life of your dreams if you focus on this one thing. And I give 100% credit to this exercise for everything that I've manifested. My brand, my businesses, everything that I've created in the last 3 years since I was released from prison, and I spent 8.5 years there studying this stuff. This is what I give credit to, and I want you to apply this in your life. Because remember, creation is finished. So you're not really creating anything. You're just manifesting different portions of what's already created, connecting to it, not forcing it, but falling asleep, creating these feeling states, and throughout the day. It can be really, really simple, and I'm going to get into the magic right now. All right, so this is really cool. This is where the story begins, where my grandfather met Neville. All right, so my grandfather had this friend, and this friend comes to my grandfather and says, hey, you got to check out this guy, Neville. You got to go see what this guy's teaching. It's something really, really magical and amazing. And my grandfather at this point was basically homeless, and he was sick. He got sick with dengue fever 3 times to where he almost died from the stuff. Like, it literally almost killed him. He was depressed. He was hopeless. He had no purpose in his life. He was nearly homeless. So he agreed to go see Neville Goddard because he was just so down in the dumps that he wanted to try to find something. And he didn't want to go to a church because he said that they're always trying to get your money. Like, they want 10%. And he didn't have 10%. 10% was a lot of money to him at that point because he didn't have any money. And at that point, Neville was doing his lectures at the Wilshire Ebell Theater for free. So my grandfather could go see him, and Neville wouldn't charge a thing. And Neville even said that when he first took the podium, when my grandfather went to the Wilshire Ebell Theater to see him. The first thing Neville Goddard said was, there will not be a tray passed around today. You are not to give me any money. So at this point, after my grandfather heard Neville Goddard say that, my grandfather was like, okay, I want to hear what this guy has to say. I mean, he's obviously got something important to say. He's got to try to get my money somewhere along the line. So then Neville Goddard starts speaking about imagination creates reality. And my grandfather thinks that Neville Goddard is crazy at this point. He's about to walk out, but then Neville Goddard says, listen, try to disprove me. I want you to try to disprove. If you think that I'm crazy, you think that I don't know what I'm talking about, I want you to try this. And if you can disprove me, I will give everything up. I'll never teach again. I'll walk away from the podium forever, and you will disprove me, but you can't disprove me. Neville Goddard says, if you do this, it will happen, and you will never disprove me if you actually do this. And then Neville Goddard begins to instruct everyone within the audience to start with their imagination, start climbing up and down a ladder in their imagination as if they're doing it in the present moment. Climbing up and down this ladder, left hand, left foot, right foot, all the way up the ladder, climb back down the ladder, up the ladder, down the ladder. And you do this for about 20 minutes as you're falling asleep at night. And then he instructed everyone within the audience to write down on 10 pieces of paper that you are not going to climb a ladder. I will not climb a ladder. You are to write it on 10 pieces of paper and put those papers everywhere where you're going to see them, like on the mirror in the bathroom, by your dresser, by your bed, on the refrigerator, in your car, at your office, in your wallet, in your pocket. You're supposed to keep these everywhere and remind yourself that you are to refuse to climb a ladder throughout the day. So you're going to fall asleep climbing a ladder for 3 nights. And throughout the day, you are telling yourself that you are not going to climb a ladder, and you have reminders everywhere. And if somebody asks you to climb a ladder, you are to refuse to climb this ladder. But you continue to climb that ladder as you go to sleep at night. And Neville Goddard instructed everyone that if you actually do this, if you spend the time and you actually vividly perform and see yourself in your imagination climbing up and down a ladder and you fall asleep doing it, there's nothing that can stop it from happening in your reality. There will be something crazy and magical that happens in your world where all of a sudden you're forced into a situation where you have to climb a ladder, or it'll just slip your mind. Somebody will ask you to climb a ladder. You haven't seen a ladder in a couple of years, but all of a sudden there's ladders everywhere, and now you got to climb a ladder. Why is that? Because you fell asleep climbing the ladder. So my grandfather accepts Neville Goddard's challenge of climbing the ladder. And he does this for the sole reason of disproving Neville Goddard and to show that he was a fraud and that he was crazy and that imagination doesn't create reality. So my grandfather does it for that sole reason. So he does everything Neville Goddard says. He writes down, I will not climb a ladder. And then he imagines himself climbing a ladder. So he does this for 2 nights. The third day after he visualizes it for 2 nights, he gets called over to my great-grandparents' house, which is Elmer Sr., and they call him over there. His mother, which is my great-grandmother, calls him over and says, hey, son, I have something I want to talk to you about. So my grandfather catches a bus because at this time, my grandfather was very poor. He didn't have any money at all. So he heads over to his mother's house, which is my great-grandmother's house. And then he walks in towards the house. He gets off the bus, walks towards the house. And my great-grandfather, Elmer Sr., is on the roof. And my grandfather's walking by and he says, hey, son, can you hand me that bucket of paint? So my grandfather, he says, yeah. Okay, so he grabs the bucket of paint and he goes halfway up the ladder. Then he says, oh, my God, I climbed a goddamn ladder like this guy said I would. And my grandfather was very upset about this because he had written it everywhere. He had put it on the mirror in the wall, in the refrigerator, in his pocket, everywhere that he was going to disprove Neville, and he was trying his hardest not to climb a ladder so he could disprove Neville Goddard, but he couldn't. So then he went back to see Neville Goddard. And there was a much smaller group at this time because at the time Neville Goddard instructed everyone to do this. He says, for everyone that does climb a ladder, I want you to come back to this meeting in the back of the Wilshire Ebell Theater. It's going to be a much smaller group because not that many people are actually going to do it. Most people say they're going to do it, but they don't actually do it. But if you actually do it, I want you to come back to this meeting. So my grandfather goes to this meeting and he walks up to Neville Goddard and he says, I climbed a damn ladder. And he says, of course you did. That's why you're here. And that's why everyone is here. Everyone climbed the ladder because you actually did the exercise and you fall asleep doing it. So now you know that imagination creates reality. But Neville Goddard also says, how does it feel to know that you could have just as easily made $1 million in cash as you did climbing that ladder as you're falling asleep at night? So at this point, my grandfather's like, all right, Neville, teach me everything. I want to know everything. I want to become successful. I want to make $1 million. So that's when my grandfather joined the V.I.P group with Neville Goddard. And then within 6 weeks, my grandfather had $250,000 in cash in his safety deposit box. And it's this exercise that I talked about at the very beginning of this video that is the most important exercise that Neville Goddard taught everyone if you want to be successful using the law of assumption. And this was based on a $3 million exercise. But with inflation the way that it is today, it's more like 30 million today, what they were trying to create then, which was this exercise right here. So Neville Goddard tells everyone, this is basically the same thing as climbing a ladder, okay? The same exercise. You're not going to need the notes this time. I just wanted to prove to you that what you fall asleep with at night trumps anything that you try to do throughout the day. Whatever you fall asleep doing is going to happen, and you're not going to be able to stop that because you lose free will in that state of consciousness. You cannot stop it from happening once you fall asleep with something unless you completely change it at that point. And climbing a ladder is something that you really can't change. But if it's like changing concepts of self, you can constantly grow with those types of things. But with climbing a ladder, you can't. So what Neville Goddard was instructing here was creating $3 million. So he gave everyone the same exercise, except you do it for a little bit longer. That was the only reason. That way you can make it real in your imagination, because it's a little bit more difficult than just climbing a ladder to sleep at night. So Neville Goddard instructed everyone to create a visual scene of being on a cruise ship. I think he called it an ocean liner back then or something, but it's really a cruise ship. Or you can really create this any place that you want. That was just what Neville Goddard used. And what he did was he created a scene where you are in it and you have 2 friends or 2 family members and they're coming to you and congratulating you on your success. But you don't know how that success is going to happen. Just that you are ultra successful in that moment and they are congratulating you. You could see the emotion on their face. You can see the body language. You can hear it. You can see it. You can feel it. Everything. You're bringing all of your senses into this imaginal scene. And then you loop this scene over and over and over again as you're going to sleep at night. And you do it for more than 3 nights. I think he instructed around 30 nights, I believe. I'm not quite certain exactly how long. But really, you should do this until you truly feel that you have created the scene very vividly real and you've really fallen asleep with that. You'll start, and essentially what's going to happen is the same thing as a ladder exercise. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do to stop this. You're going to be under compulsion to start creating money and wealth into your life, and the motion of the universe is going to control everything you do within that state of consciousness where you're just going to act automatically. It may be some things where you feel slightly uncomfortable or you're shifting concepts of self to develop yourself into this new being, but it's going to happen. And just to note, Neville Goddard never instructed people to write things down and not to do them ever again within the V.I.P group that my grandfather went to for many years after that. Okay, he continued to see Neville Goddard, and he created $250,000 within the first 6 weeks after doing this exercise. This is the exercise he did where he made that money. It didn't all come in at one time, but he eventually made all of that money, which would be the equivalent to $30 million now within a very short period of time. And I really don't think that Neville Goddard created that exercise with writing down, "I will not climb a ladder," for any other reason but to disprove the fact that you can do anything within your world to change what you fall asleep with. Like at night, what you fall asleep with doing and who you are and what you consent to believe is true of your world, whatever you fall asleep is going to happen to you the next day. And there's nothing that you can stop that with doing. You can't do anything to stop that. But what we found is that using a not exercise can actually be really part of it, because Neville Goddard probably knew some of this, but I don't think that was the reasoning behind it, that he wanted to create the not exercise as part of it, the speed of the process. But really it does, because if you say, "I will not climb a ladder," what are you picturing? You're picturing yourself climbing a ladder. So all day long, my grandfather was saying, "I will not climb a ladder," but his imagination was what? Picturing him climbing a ladder, because the subconscious mind doesn't feel that, right? So he was speeding up the process, even imagining himself climbing a ladder, and then he was trying to force it and trying to say, "No, I will not climb a ladder." And as we all know, when you really don't want something to happen, it kind of pushes it your way even more quickly. But based on Neville Goddard's exercise that he gave my grandfather, and something that I have used myself, and I accredit all of my success to this exercise, I have handcrafted a visualization sleep meditation to walk you through this exercise. And it has alpha waves, theta waves, and delta waves to also induce the sleep state as you're going into this visualization, this guided visualization that I created. I'm going to put a card on the screen to that free sleep meditation that you can use, where I have handcrafted it personally to get you to the next level, to have the full experience of what Neville Goddard was teaching. I'm going to put that card right on the screen. Click on that card. It's absolutely free. I love you guys, and I will